So if you've been following my channel for long, you might remember the video where I retrieved a big walnut log from my friend Bob. This actually happens to be a piece of that log. It has real nice thick sapwood on it. The heartwood's still nice dark brown, chocolatey brown, so I thought that'd make some good contrasts in this djembe that I'm making in this video. I mounted it before the video started between centers and trued up the end and put a faceplate on it. So right here it's actually on a faceplate on the drive end, and then the other end's supported by the tailstock for now. Roughing out like this, I'm running about 150 RPMs. You'll see me reach over and tap it up every now and then as I get a little closer to true on the length of it. The whole purpose of getting that faceplate on early is because when you're roughing out like this, well, the faceplate and keeping the speed low, when you're roughing out like this with a big log, I mean, that thing weighed about 80 pounds when I put it up on there. Even though my lathe is bolted to the floor, that can send some serious vibrations through it when it gets up too fast. So if you're going to try something like this, my recommendation is make sure your lathe is bolted to the floor, or it weighs about a metric ton, one or the other. But my cat's here visiting too, by the way. Anyway, so I'm gonna let this run through the roughing out stage, and then you'll see me divide it in two like in the last video. I'm running this at 5x speed rather than my normal time-lapse rate, so this video is going to be very long. However, bear with me, this is kind of one to make it a little easier to catch all the details. Maybe not as well as you could if I was running at regular speed, but then it would be 3 hours and 5 minutes, and I don't think most people want to watch that. I do slow it down, and I'll explain in a couple of places, and I'll explain why in those places I had to make some tool modifications on the fly, especially having to do with my steady rest. I actually had to change the tires on it, so to speak, but we'll get into that about halfway through the video or so, so we'll get into that. Anyway, enjoy for now, and I'll be back to explain little bits and pieces as we go. So I had a few little problems. There's something in the electrical. I don't know if it was the VFD on the lathe or if it was my breakers on the wall, but anyway, you see me running back and forth there. When I disappear, I'm going over the breaker box, and anyway, I ended up taking the housing off the VFD and blowing it out with compressed air, and that seems to have solved it, but it took me a while to figure out that was what I needed to do. I will have to get a hold of Grizzly and find out why it's doing this. It only does it if I've been running at the lower speeds. So running for as long as I did below 200, I think had something to do with it. Actually, probably below 300, because it was doing it up until once I got up to about 350, it stopped doing it. So I don't know exactly what the deal is. I'm swinging an 80-pound log on the end of a 1.25" spindle. That might have something to do with it. But anyway, I'll have to get in touch with the Grizzly and find out what's going on. It could be in my electrical here in the shop. It's not the most reliable setup, so we'll figure it out as we go. But I'm getting ready to true up the well, that'll be the top end there. I always mount the faceplate on what will be the bottom end when I first put these on, for the simple fact it's easier to hollow out the bowl first, and then when you flip it around, everything's a lot lighter. You know, you're losing the maximum amount of weight fastest this way. So anyway, keep watching. I'll be back when I see something else I need to mention. this one is 22 inches long, and it's about 11 and a half across the end there, diameter, I guess. And something I was failed to mention before is you might have noticed in the other video, when I trued up the end to put the faceplate on, I left a little nub in the center. I make that nub the exact inside diameter of the faceplate so that it centers itself when I put it on. It makes things so much simpler. Just thought I'd mention that. Anyway, I gotta sit there and mark it at the halfway point, and I'll cut in a ways, and then I'll start shaping the bell. The outside part probably produces twice as much shavings as the inside part. I don't know why, because really I cut less on the outside than on the inside, but I guess it's the shape of the shavings. You know, they come off in big chunks on the outside, whereas the inside it's more like dust, because I'm cutting end grain. Although with this new tool, this pro-forme tool, it actually does take some shavings off the inside too. So anyway, we will be back when we need to. Okay, so here I'm going to cut a little groove in the outside of the bell, right there, for the wheels of the steady rest to ride in. I'm using 52mm skateboard wheels. That's this video. That was kind of a silly. You have to understand that on an 11.5-inch drum, these skateboard wheels, when they're on the bowl out there on the outside of it, are actually running over 100 miles an hour. So they get hot, and I actually managed to melt one. So anyway, we'll get to that, like I said. I put another groove on the bowl up there. When we get to that part, you'll see that. And then I cut a ring shelf on it. Now the ring shelf is for the bottom ring of the tensioning. When you string the head on the drum, there's a ring at the bottom of the bowl, and then there's 2 rings at the top, or 3, depending on what system you're using to do it. And then the ropes go down to the bottom one, up to the top one, back and forth, and of course that's what keeps tension on the head. Some djembes don't have the ring shelf. The ones that I've seen from the Ivory Coast, they've always got that ring shelf cut in there, and it just looks nicer because that bottom ring will always stay parallel to the top of the drum. When there's no ring shelf, then that ring can get, if tension is tighter on one side than the other, then it gets all lopsided and it looks kind of goofy. For a long time I didn't know that, and I was building them without the ring shelf, and once I saw my first Ivory Coast drum, I was like, well, hey, that's a good idea. So I started doing that to all my drums after that. So that's it's kind of the way to be, you know. Anyway, I'll let it go for a while, and we'll come back after I've got the ring shelf in there. Okay, so it's time to put on the steady rest, and here it comes. This is my own creation, and a couple of things about it. One, that I'm using the 52mm skateboard wheels, and I'm going to be changing those out altogether. I'm going to make aluminum wheels for it with a slight crown, so they're kind of rounded, and hopefully that won't damage the wood that I'm putting them on too much, but we'll see how that works out. The second is I used a piece of 1/4 inch thick plate steel across the bottom. It's not stiff enough, and you're going to see in the first part of this hollowing process, if you watch closely, even at high speed, you can see how the frame of the thing kind of shifts side to side. When I had to put new wheels on the thing, I decided to go ahead and modify the base, and I made what I'm going to call a saddle so that it sits down on the sides of the lathe as well. We're going to point that out later on in the video too, once I've got that done. But these are things that, like, you guys like me that build your own tools to further your hobby, these are things that you got to kind of watch out for, so I wanted to mention them so that you'll know and not have to go through the mistakes and the learning curve and the chance of screwing up a project like I did. I didn't screw up the project, but there was a definite possibility of it. So got everything adjusted, and let's start hollowing. Yeah, a couple more things that I did. I built this tool rest that I'm putting in right now. You see the holes there allows me to put that little pin in there, and that gives me something to lever against with the pro-forme tool. I also built a much longer shafted tool handle for the pro-forme, which allows me to get into a deeper drum, which this is actually, at this point in time when I was doing this, it was the biggest drum I've attempted this way. I've done one bigger since then, kind of like while waiting on things for editing ideas and such. I did a big maple drum, but this one, the shaft on the tool handle is a 9/16 inch, actually steering column shaft out of a Ford truck. Dad had it laying around for years, and we decided it looked like a good thing to use. It was very, very hard steel. It let off really fine sparks when I was cutting it. So that helped a bunch, let me tell you. So anyway, but yeah, this, you can see how I'm levering against that pin, and it just plows through this thing. I mean, I have never used such a wonderful hollowing tool. I have no regrets on spending the money that I spent on the thing. So pro-forme, Pro-forme, and with an E on the end of forma. It's basically form with an E on the end. Look it up. Google it, whatever. You can find them out there. They're really good tools. Anyway, on to the next one. So my little anchor pin there, or fulcrum pin, whatever you want to call it, actually ends up vibrating out right here. And when it did so, I decided, since it was 10:30 at night, I was tired and it was late enough, I'd go in and continue on the next day in the morning. And so I actually made another pin because I thought that one was lost, and then found that one by the door as I was leaving. But so now I've got two of them. The wheel that's kind of hidden down there in the corner, that is the one that melted. So what happened is, this whole time I've been turning, those wheels have been running at 100 miles an hour or so, and it ends up that they got nice and warm. Well, then I shut down the shop, and of course all four of them are pressed up against the drum. Well, that particular one was pressed up against the drum hard enough that when I came out the next day, one side of it was flat. So it was like thup, 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 thup. And it's like, well, that's not going to work. So I called all over the place and finally found Cap's Bicycle Shop up in Topeka actually had a set of skateboard wheels. Now the funny part about that is that they don't carry skateboards anymore. They used to, and this set that they had was the only set that they had, and it had been sitting around in their shop for who knows how long. So they gave me a good deal on it, and I promised them I'd mention them in the video. Really nice guys, so I can't say enough good about them. Besides, they have the fat tire bikes that can't be a bad place. Those are awesome bikes. Things cost as much as my lathe, but still. Anyway, so I got those replaced. I also added the saddle to the steady rest and stiffened it up. So now it's running a much more quiet. Sounds great, you know. Also, I added a fan to kind of blow air on me there. It was kind of a hot spot in the shop, and well, I'm running a 220 volt machine. Of course, it was hot right there. So I kind of pan up to the fan here in a second and show you that. I was like, yay, I got a fan. There it is. Anyway, so on with the hollowing, and here in a minute we'll flip it around and we'll start on the bell of it, hollowing it out. All right. So to prep the jam chuck for the drum, I went ahead and actually used the tool rest off of one of the other lathes I have. I've got 5 of them, so I've always got extra parts like this. None of them are as big as this machine, but I've got a nice tall tool post anyway, so we're good there. So anyway, I used that to get the jam chuck ready, and then just kind of scoot it over out of the way. I think I actually left the banjo on the lathe just up against the headstock when I was done. That's where it's at now, so I'm assuming that's what I did. But again, the jam chuck has to fit very, very tight, because you're not just supporting the weight of the end of it. Like I've turned with jam chucks in either end of a drum to just touch the outside. Actually, you'll see that in future videos when I'm finishing the drums up after they've dried. But I use a jam chuck, and when you're using it in one end, it's got to fit tight enough that it's actually holding it. So like after I've turned this thing, they got the inside of it all hollowed out. You'll see when I pull the wheels away from the tool rest, or from the steady rest, that it actually stays in place. It doesn't just fall off. I have to take a mallet and beat the thing off of it. But it has to fit that tight so that it doesn't pop off of the jam chuck while you've got it in the steady rest and go, it would make a mess, to say the least. So if you attempt something like this, make sure you get it tight. So anyway, I wouldn't try turning it without a steady rest just on a jam chuck. I'm afraid there'd be enough torque there to pop it off. So you have to figure out some way to support it. But anyway, here I'm getting the jam chuck, getting it all up on there, and we're all set to go. So let's start hollowing again. since I now had 2 of the little pins, I decided to put both of them in there and actually use them to brace back and forth, so I could actually use the tool to drill a little bit easier, which works out really well too. Drilling this with the pro-forme instead of a Forstner bit sure saves a lot of time putting the tailstock on and off the lathe. In my first video where I was making a drum this way, I would put the tailstock on and drill, 3 inches deep and hollow it out, and then put the tailstock back on and drill it again and take it off, and over and over. When I resorted to when I made this tool rest with the fulcrum pins and the longer tool, I also adjusted the little brass guard on top of the pro-forme and pulled it back a little bit. Oh, there I broke through. Hey, look at that. So anyway, pulled it back a little bit so that the nose of the tool cuts a little better, and that was the trick I needed, and now it actually drills, so it's pretty awesome. So the walls I leave somewhere between 3/4 and 1 inch thick until it's dry, and then I'll end up taking anywhere from 1/8 to 1/4 off the outside, try to put some kind of decorative beads and coves and whatnot in it, and once it's dried out, and then I'll slap a finish on it, so to speak, and then I'll be able to make rings and put a head on it. Which my plan is to actually do videos of all these processes so that people can see what it is that I do. I've actually been making drums for 25 plus years now. I actually originally got into wood turning because I was making Cooper style drums where you cut staves and glue them together without a lathe. So I'd glue the staves together, and then I'd take a block plane and plane off the corners, and then sand and rasp and to get them as round as possible, but they weren't round. And then a guy I was working with in a cabinet shop said he had a lathe that I could buy from him if I wanted to, and I bought my first lathe for $150. That was a long time ago. I still have that lathe. I don't use it, but I still have it. It's kind of funny. I think I've got 9 total lathes. I got 5 that are in working order. So, but actually only 3 of those are set up. One of them's together, but it's not plugged in or in a usable location. The other one's still in the box. So, but anyway, there it is, all nice and done. I'll show you the inside, and then I'll move the camera around so you can actually see the outside of it. But I love the way the sapwood and the heartwood interact on walnut. It's just fantastic. So, well, here in a second I'll give you a quick peek of how I bag them. I use a burlap sack and a bunch of the shavings from making the drum. And then I also will give you a sneak peek of the one that I'm working on, although I didn't do a video of it, but I'll post some pictures of it onto the Facebook pages and such that I'm on, so hopefully some people get to see it. Anyway, y'all have a nice one. If you haven't subscribed yet, you ought to, because I will be doing more of these and covering more aspects of the drum building process. Alright, thanks for watching. 24 inches long, and at its biggest with the bark on, it's 17 inches, so it's like almost scraping the bed. This ought to be fun. I don't think I'm actually going to do a video of this one. It's kind of scary. If I'm successful with it, I'll pick out another log the same size and do a video on that one, but this one, yeah, it's kind of scary. By the way, it's spinning at 100 RPMs right now.